I knew that we needed $1.35 a square foot on a monthly basis on an average to pay the mortgage and run the building and pay the staff. And there were no comps. Well, how do you price this stuff?
What happened? How much is it chalked up to COVID? How can we, take lessons from, what you guys did in the 2000 period today to bring things back? Or what should we do different?
Oh, that's a big question. Downtown LA was on rocketing to the moon. We were in international news, positive stories every day. People who prior to this all going on said downtown will never come back, which just wound me up, right? And then COVID hit. And COVID, I didn't have kids in this lifetime, but I had a city, right? COVID was like seeing your child struck by a car in the crosswalk in front of school. People didn't come back. Well, we have a lot of work to do. I've been in downtown for 31 years. I walk the streets with impunity day and night. I don't feel any more safe or unsafe than I've ever felt. But people that look in and see press reports, of course, think, and then, when we had the ICE protests and cars burning, they think all of downtown is that way.
Welcome to All Things Real Estate with Ari Wintraub, a show where we get to meet and learn from players within and around the real estate industry, an industry that provides incredible opportunity for creativity, entrepreneurship, and wealth building. Join me as we learn the tips and tricks from these insiders and helping us to carve out a space within this massive industry. Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I am your host, Ari Wintraub, and I am really looking forward to today's interview with Hal Bastian, an expert in downtown commercial real estate. Before we get into it, I want to ask you to please click follow, subscribe, and share the show with anyone that you know who might enjoy conversations centered around real estate. I've wanted to have Hal on the show since I first thought about doing a podcast because I'm a big fan of downtown LA. I grew up in a big city and I have hope for it, and I want to see what the future of LA holds. So in this interview, we're going to hear all about that and get to know Hal more. And so without further ado, Hal, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ari, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do this. So to kick things off, I know that you have been a key figure in downtown LA's resurgence since 1994. Anyone who's worked in downtown real estate knows your name. And so I want you to share with us your journey from 1994 to today and how the LA downtown renaissance came to be.
Well, how much time do we have? It's a long story. I just turned 65 years old. It's a big story.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to take us earlier than 1984 to give context to everything, but I won't take too long doing it. I was born 3 miles from the studio at Queen of Angels Hospital in the 101. Grew up in the San Fernando Valley. When I was 17 years old, I was more powerful than I've ever been since. I was the drum major of the Granada Hills High School marching band and drill team. And my year, we won the All-City Championship for all of LA Unified School District for band and drill team. So that's some leadership stuff started coming out. And frankly, everyone hated me because I made us stay late for every practice. And when we won, though, they were okay with it. So some people call me Mr. Downtown. Some people call me the mayor of downtown.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I kind of think of myself as its butler. The whole thing is my mansion. But the fourth leg of the stool of metaphors is I'm its drum major. And so I didn't win that championship, by myself. I won it with 150 people. And that's my role in the community, too, is showing people where we can go and then helping lead everyone to it. And so that's a good thing. So that's where it all started. Went to school at UCLA, went directly to law school at the ripe old age of 22, realized I was a lover, not a fighter. And I was drinking alcoholically even back then. I'm sober now since February 5th of 2001, thank God. And so that's allowed me to do all the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But I dropped out of law school and I became a bartender with no experience. And the rest is history. I met somebody involved in commercial real estate And that's how I got involved. And I started my real estate career in 1983 with a firm named Julian Studley, a funny little name, but we were office space brokers. And I found that to not be the most exciting thing in the world. So I started doing deals with retailers and restaurateurs and bar owners because they drank a lot and so did I. So it was an affinity group. And it was really, really great. So I enjoyed it. In 1994, now we're to 1994, I was recruited by a small shop named Cushman & Wakefield to come to downtown Los Angeles in the middle of a recession, right? Stay alive till 95 is what we used to say then. And it was for the rebuild.
Right, all of LA was in
The whole
hit.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere.
Right,
The whole
certain conditions.
Yeah,
with the riots and the earthquake.
yeah, exactly. So the riots were in 92 and that earthquake was in 94. I also had the pleasure of being in the 71 Somar quake, so anyway, I've been through a lot of earthquakes here at Whittier as well. And I got recruited, and at the time, the name of this property was the Broadway Plaza. The Broadway department stores was a very, very big regional player in the retail scene. And Sam Zell actually helped develop this whole city block bounded by 7th Street on the north, 8th Street on the south, Flower on the west, and Hope on the east. And it was a mixed-use project. Before we talk a lot about mixed use now. It had an office tower, 700 South Flower. It had the Broadway department store. It had a Hyatt hotel, and then it had retail. Well, about 100,000 square feet of that retail was either empty or on month to month. And when I started there in the fall of 1994, my first day on the job, I came out of my office at 6:00 and the entire office had left without saying goodbye to the new guy. So that was the culture of downtown.
Yeah.
Come in, go out.
Sure.
And I walked down to 7th Street, and I swear, all right, the rapture had happened, and either they forgot to take me or they left me on purpose.
Wow.
And there's like a tumbleweed blowing down the street and no bodies. There was just no one. And downtown at that time was just a big office park where people came in the morning and left. And that's ironic because until the 50s, the downtown area was the center of everything. You had to go downtown to go shopping, to see your lawyer, your banker, your attorney, your accountant. In fact, the two biggest retail streets in downtown were 7th Street and Broadway. And then as we suburbanized after World War II into the 60s and 70s and started doing regional malls, that kind of went away. So by the time I got to downtown in 1994, it wasn't a place to be, but this was a salary job. Yeah, Cushman & Wakefield. So I took it.
Sure.
And I thought, I'll do it for a couple of years, right? Well, it ended up being from 94 to the year 2000 to finish that up. And in 2000, there was a man named Tom Gilmore. Tom Gilmore was a developer who was taking advantage of a new public policy that the city council passed in 1999 called the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance. And I'll tell you what that means in a moment. But until 1965, the tallest commercial office buildings in downtown were 13 stories. We were a low-rise city for a lot of reasons. We had a lot of land. We weren't like Manhattan where it was limited. Culturally, we didn't want to have that density, and we had big earthquakes once in a while. And under Mayor Tom Bradley, we took Bunker Hill, which had historically been an area where affluent and rich people lived.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. In fact, this was a Spanish-speaking town. LA was founded on September 4th of 1781, Spanish-speaking. And then once guys that looked like me came from the East Coast and married the ladies with the Spanish land grants, which is marrying well, and got control of the city council, all the street names were in Spanish.
Right.
And
Chavez. Yeah.
Cesar Chavez wasn't thought of then, but when this happened, but he came later. And with the stroke of the mayor's pen, all the streets in downtown and beyond became translated from Spanish to English. 3 streets on Bunker Hill, which is where the mansions were, became known as
right up on the hill, big views.
Yeah, and with Angel's Flight, which is a funicular.
I was on that on Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, I was one of the people that helped bring it back in 2017, and I'm the president of the Angel's Flight Foundation today. But 3 streets became known as Faith, Hope, and Charity. So a bunch of millionaires, Ari, found themselves living on charity. They didn't like that too much. They didn't think it out. So they renamed it Grand Avenue. Right. And Faith became Flower, Hope stayed Hope. And that's what happened. So when Tom Bradley started building and getting built taller buildings on Bunker Hill, what we now think of as the high-rise skyline, people moved out of the 13-story downtown to the new downtown, and guess what happened to the retail and everything else? It just diminished because the people weren't there anymore.
Right.
So under the leadership of a woman named Carol Schatz, who was the president and CEO of the Central City Association, which has been around since 1924. It's a business advocacy group. For lack of a better term, it's a parochial chamber of downtown Los Angeles.
Okay.
And she made it much bigger than that, public policy and beyond. And she also established something called the Downtown Center Business Improvement District, which is part of my story, which I'll tell you in a moment. She came up with the idea of converting these old empty office buildings that had been empty for decades into residential.
Right. Kind of like 4 to 6 level buildings.
Well, actually, these are 12-story buildings.
Okay, but they were Bunker Hill
Right.
high rise.
Right. So the high rises that we've started building on Bunker Hill sucked everybody out of the old buildings.
Right.
And they were empty and they were obsolete and they weren't being used.
Okay, so what year is this now?
Well, this was happening in the 70s, really starting in the 70s when they
actually come in and start thinking about the
late 90s.
Okay.
The late 90s. But there was a man named Ira Yellen. God bless Ira. He was a real trailblazer for downtown. When no one else believed in downtown LA, Ira Yellen did. And Ira bought the Bradbury building and he bought the Grand Central Market, which in the Grand Central Market included the Metropolitan Water District building at the southwest corner of West 3rd and South Broadway. And it was an office building. Well, Ira couldn't build, there was no demand for that office space, and he wanted to convert it to housing. But guess what? You can't build housing in a commercially zoned building. And he was able to go through a zone change and get it built, and he demonstrated that it could work. And then Carol was like, well, that's just not, efficient. It's very expensive to hold a building with no income for years. And so she went to Sacramento, and we passed a law that allowed for the conversion of office buildings into residential and adaptive.
Then they don't have to go through the process,
right?
Like you said, multiple years.
Yeah.
And so it can happen sooner. Okay. So that's a great overview and a sort of introduction to what happened on Bunker Hill, how it sucked out the residential community,
right?
And how when you came in the late 90s, there was a void. So then there's these organizations and these leaders that are pushing for changes that are allowing for this adaptive reuse that can be more streamlined to bring in residential. So you're in the end of the 90s.
That's right.
You're at Cushman Wakefield. You're obviously heavily involved and very knowledgeable and an advocate for this. And so what's the landscape as we're heading towards the new millennium?
It was quiet. It still was not robust. Carol was one of the very few people that believed in downtown Los Angeles, and even she at that time had her doubts. But under her leadership, the adaptive reuse ordinance was passed by the LA City Council in June of 1999.
Okay.
And the importance of that was it streamlined the process so that you literally could go to the city and say, I want to convert this to housing. And it's like, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
There was no there was no hearings to go through entitlements and all that kind of stuff. And a man named Tom Gilmore was the first to take advantage of it on 3 historic buildings on 4th Street between Spring and Main. And that area, Ari, was really, really rough. There were people suffering and there were encampments, and it was scary.
Yeah, Spring's a little bit more east than the Bunker Hill and such. But that's the historic core now. That's where the Ronin building is, and so they were the ones that spearheaded that around 2000.
And that's where many thousands of people live on Spring Street. So everyone thought Tom was crazy, and I had finished my job at Cushman & Wakefield. I had been trying to get a meeting with him. My joke is to find out what kind of drugs he was doing so I could get me some. And I couldn't get to him. And I called a friend of mine named Ed Rosenthal. He calls himself the poet broker who worked for Grubb & Ellis, I think, at the time, and said, hey, he had sold the buildings to Tom. And for less than $10 a square foot, anybody in real estate, all in, hard cost, soft cost, seismic, fit out, MEP,
We're just architecture.
$100. It was $100, but a scary neighborhood, right? Anyway, Tom heard from Ed, and he took a meeting with me, and I just went to meet with him, and I met with him on leap year day, Ari. It was February 29th, the year 2000. And I said, I want to understand what you're doing, and it seems a little bit crazy. And, we talked about my background and where he was from and so on and so forth. And so at the end of this really informational interview, he said, well, why don't you be, like, what are you up to? Why don't you be my leasing agent? And I said, and because I had told him I was finishing with Cushman and Wakefield, and I said, well, Tom, I've never leased an apartment in my life. In the state of California, the real estate license is good for everything. Right. From selling, $1 billion office building or a hotel to a condo in West Covina. There's no difference. Or at least leasing apartments.
Right, but your specialty was
Retail.
Yeah.
It was retail and commercial. And he said, well, no, you haven't, but you're a really good salesman, so just come on board. And I said, I named a number. He said yes, which means it was too low. And and I started the next day on March 1, the year 2000.
I didn't know that. So you had an intro and a foray in the residential leasing.
Yeah, well, that was it. So he built it, and his partner, Jerry Peroni, a lady, was his partner, and they built it. And we just celebrated the 25th anniversary of the opening of the first building called the San Fernando at 400 South Main Street.
You guys just had an anniversary.
June 20th, yeah. And one of the things, Ari, that I like to say is downtown is an overnight wonder I've been working on since 1994. And this was part of it. So when I finished my work there, I was getting close to finishing it. I had
and these buildings didn't have retail on the ground floor.
Well, there was ground floor space, but there was nothing in it, right? So
now when someone does a building, there's always going to be the mixed use component, but that wasn't the case then.
Well, we knew that we needed to have amenities and services if we were going to attract people to come into our apartments. And we built what we call loft style apartments, which just means it was open space. We took the flooring down to concrete. We sanded it and got it clean down to the concrete. Then we sealed it with epoxy, which is non-porous, which will become important in a moment. And we put in kitchens and bathrooms, not fancy. And I knew that we needed $1.35 a square foot on a monthly basis on an average to pay the mortgage and run the building and pay the staff. And there were no comps. Well, how do you price this stuff?
Sure.
So I took $1.35 a square foot. I multiplied it by the square footage of the 10 different floor plans in the San Fernando building. There were 10 on a floor, a stack. And I did $1.35 because that was closest to the street and kind of the loudest. And
I had just under $1,500 a month.
Yeah, there you go. And so, which had not been done in that neighborhood. And then I added
thousands.
I added a nickel a floor till I got to $2 at the top. And everyone said, you'll never get it. Well, yeah, we did. But what one of the things was, Ari, is, I accepted this job because it was just spontaneous and it was exciting to be asked. Yeah, I want to do something differently. But I'm like, there's 3 buildings. So I think the San Fernando had 70, the Hellman, which wraps around a bank, the old bank on the corner, which is why we dubbed it the old bank district. And then the Continental building, I think we had 241 units. So after I took the job, I'm like, how am I going to lease these 241 units when this neighborhood is so scary?
Yeah.
Which is a question you should ask yourself before you accept the job. And I'm a very, very spiritual guy. And I had a golden retriever named Buddy, the golden retriever. And I knew it was hard to be a renter and find somebody who would rent to you because the landlords are legitimately concerned about pee and poop and wear and tear and barking and, liability and you name it.
Well, you guys got non-porous.
Yeah, non-porous. So I just, God said, Hal, be pet friendly. And I took that idea to Tom and to Jerry, and they thought it was a great idea. Ari, I leased 241 units to 350 people with 100 dogs, 100 cats, 2 parrots, and an iguana. And the world changed.
Of course.
And here's why it changed. Because these were early adopters, right? And they came in with people on the street in encampments because they realized we were doing something different and new. And I want to talk a lot about that kind of suffering because unfortunately it still exists and then some.
Yeah.
And you and I know quite a bit about that. And so they had to come downstairs to walk their dog.
Right.
And so if you and I are walking down the street and we both have dogs, guess what? We'll say hello to each other.
Of course, yeah.
It's just you and I were walking down the street, and I started trying to talk to you. You try to assess who is this guy, what does he want?
Right. I may not get your name. I mean your pet's name.
Your pet's name. Yeah. Well, for the longest time, I never knew anybody's name, but just but people I did leases with, I knew. Anywho, it changed the world. And one of the things that I did because it created a community, and people were coming and to see this, and I spent a lot of time proselytizing adaptive reuse. Other developers were coming. I said, it's great, you got to do it, but when you do it, you got to be dog friendly, and other people started listening. So I'm the dog father of DTLA.
I know, and I've seen your photo on some of the space you're advertising. Your dog, and
I always pimp out my dogs.
Yeah.
So that was
Okay. So who were the tenants? So we're in the early 2000s. You know, 5-6 years from then, downtown was really getting into, a good flow,
right.
and it was becoming really cool. But at this time, were you getting, folks from different neighborhoods that were being attracted to the cool architecture? What was the tenant base like?
Well, it was interesting because we did some ads in the Downtown News, which is the local paper, and I broke every rule in the playbook because I was touring the buildings, before we had our certificate of occupancy. But we wore hard hats, and I was safe, and the statute of limitations is passed. So I wouldn't recommend it today. But we had every profession was represented, from actors and singers who were working and probably waiting on tables to make that work, to accountants and lawyers, but for the most part, nobody with kids, right?
Okay.
Nobody with kids but so it was a very broad.
So some of there's a mix of people that were working downtown. Maybe it's
There were some people that were working downtown, but even then there was a lot of people working for themselves. So before the whole work at home craze, some people were doing that, and that was one of the great kind of things about adaptive reuse is that the commercial zoning didn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
We just added a layer of residential, so people were doing that. But Carol Schatz, who I mentioned before, who's the head of the Central City Association and the Business Improvement District, called me and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And I knew Carol. I had been a representative to the Central City Association for Cushman & Wakefield for Broadway Plaza, and I should mention, eventually it became Macy's Plaza, and now it's known as the Block.
Right. I was going to say a lot of these names.
Yeah, it's all right.
Sorry, I didn't recognize them because they've been rebranded.
Yeah, that's because I'm old. And I was at the scene of the crime. So she called me, and I went and talked to her. And in the late 1990s, Carol was trying to figure out a way to help bring downtown back, and a device called a business improvement district was being used very successfully in New York City. Then the best way to describe a business improvement district, or they're called BIDs, is it's a private government. It should really it does what government should do, but governments just don't have the capacity or money to do.
Like privately funded.
So
Probably by the landlords in the area.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Carol went to, but we didn't have a public policy to support this, right? So Carol went to Sacramento. And I misspoke earlier. The trip to Sacramento was to help get business improvement districts established, but she did get the public policy passed at the local level for adaptive reuse, and I'm sure there was some state stuff involved. But just for the record, historians are looking at this, and Carol was able to get the state to pass what's called enabling legislations that would allow business improvement districts to be formed all over the state of California. So the first business improvement district to be established was in the Fashion District, and Carol had relationships with thousands of people, and she knew all the property owners. And the way the business improvement district works, it's a nonprofit. It's called a 501c6, and it has a specific geographic boundary. And you go out to the community and say, "Hey, we want to start the business improvement district. Is your building worth more with trash on the street and feeling unsafe?"
People buy in.
And there's an assessment rate per square foot per year. It's I don't know what the number is now, but the business improvement district these days takes in about $7 million a year. And so the purpose is to keep the streets clean and safe. And Carol was able to do it. Basically, it's an election where people vote to tax themselves, a special tax. And just imagine going into whatever restaurant you go in and say, "Hey, add another tax onto it."
Right. Or like an HOA at a condo building.
Right.
The owners are all going to pitch in like an assessment. And then so it goes towards having security personnel doing lights, signs, cleaning up things.
Security people on the street 24/7. So the business improvement district cleans the streets, and the downtown center bid, which is now known as the DTLA Alliance. It was rebranded. Goes roughly from First Street on the north to near Olympic on the south, the 110 to Hill, and it does a funny gerrymander over on 4th Street to Main. And she needed a person on her team at the Business Improvement District to promote downtown LA. And I went to Tom. It sounded pretty interesting. And I went to Tom and said, what do you think? He says, oh, I got to take it.
Yeah.
So I really finished up those 3 buildings with him. So I started with Carol on December 10th of 2001.
Okay.
And I became kind of the salesman of downtown Los Angeles. So my job was to help to recruit office tenants and retailers and restaurants and bars and nightclubs and equity and debt and developers and residents to move in to downtown Los Angeles. And I knew everybody from my time in downtown and my involvement at CCA, and I knew the brokers. And what I was everybody's wingman. I didn't do the deals, but I helped people get confidence to make their deals, to move downtown. Gensler had made a decision, the largest architectural firm in the world had made a decision to move from the west side to downtown LA, and their employees were like in a mutiny. They were going to quit. And
they I know now they're in the City National Bank building on Flower and Fig.
They were called that's where they went, and it's called the Jewel Box. It's in the center. Originally, it was the big bank, Maribel branch. Sure is. And so Rob Jernigan and Andy Cohen, who were running that office, reached out to me and said, "Hey, will you come to our office, and we'll buy everybody pizza and give us a presentation on what's going on in downtown,
right,
to make them feel better."
Yeah.
And I did, and the staff did. And what I like to say is, by the time they moved downtown, it was the staff's idea to move downtown.
Yeah,
it worked out great.
So now we are here. You're in this ambassadorship role. The bids are taking place. The streets are getting cleaned up. That's where I kind of started paying attention to downtown. So now we're year like 05, 06. I know I've been working on the Evo building, which is a conglomerate of 3 buildings in South Park, and they were built around that time. So am I mistaken? Now we're kind of like in that 06, 09 pre-crash. And
yes,
and how are things looking?
Yeah, well, they were going okay. And what happened, Ari, is that Carol and I and others realized that if we were going to get people, if we were going to get more and more people to move to downtown LA into these adaptive reuse, and then and new construction, Jeff Palmer, who's the largest apartment owner in downtown LA today, he built the Medici, and he built new construction, and he was really foundationally at Carol Schatz, Jeff Palmer, and Tom Gilmore created the Renaissance for pulp cloth. I mean, nobody believed in downtown, so we did that. And so that's when it started happening. But Carol and I realized we had to have the same amenities and services that people had in Northridge or Woodland Hills or West LA. And we went to Ralph's Grocery Company, who had started in downtown LA, by the way, in 1873 at the corner of 6th and Spring Street. And they had closed their last store in the late 40s, where the site of the Intercontinental Wilshire Grand Hotel is now. That was the site of the last Ralph's.
Wow!
Because as people were moving out of downtown, there wasn't as quite the need for a grocery store. But we went to them and said, "Hey, we want you to come back to downtown to support us in this growth." And they're like, "That's nice. You're going to get the experience of wanting us to come. We're not coming." Right. And that began. Carol is a brilliant leader, and she knew that we need some data and some statistics and some numbers to sell these corporate guys. And there was a lot of new people moving to downtown Los Angeles with really, really good incomes and density. But when you looked at the demographics from 10 years earlier, all it showed was very, very low income in downtown Los Angeles, primarily in the Skid Row area and other places. So what we did is we did original research, and I headed that up, and I had people on the streets doing surveys and everything else.
Right.
Anyway, it took 5 years, but they opened a store in July of 2007, and they did $1 million a week, out of the gates.
Oh yeah, they were there.
Yeah,
Olympic, right?
Well, actually, it's on 9th Street.
Nice, right.
And Mark Trzynski, who is one of the great brokers of downtown Los Angeles, sold that entire city block bounded by 8th on the north, Ninth in the South, Flower and Hope. There's no test on all this. He sold it to CIM out of Hollywood.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and Jeff and Harlan Lee built the residential, new construction residential. So we have over 50,000 square foot house with the markup lofts above it, and that on 9th Street, and that changed the world, Ari.
Yeah.
Because now the store was doing the business that we said they would, right? And at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller, and people believe me, and which is their first mistake. And a lot of people have hopped to the pool because I told them the water was good. And in fact, I can say that there's been hardly any buildings built in the last 20 years that don't have my paw prints on it, or deals, right, frankly, because that's what I did for a living, and I got to know people. So we did that, and then we did that open 07. So you're feeling right, and then the crash of 08 came,
Right.
and Jeff and Harlan Lee also converted 801 South Grand, which was a commercial office building, and they converted the upper floors of that building into residential.
Okay.
Back in 05 to 07. And we'll talk about adaptive reuse today for the Skyline. Hopefully we'll have time. This is a big story that we're trying to find out now, and you'll have to have me on again. Anywho,
I love it.
So that was a pivotal point, that Ralph's opening, right?
Yeah.
And then later on,
Fidham
Yeah.
was right near there too, which I know it's really closed. Yeah,
Yeah.
but when did they come in?
well, Fidham came in over 40 years ago.
Oh, they were there a long time.
Yeah, they had been there a long time. They were the early adopter of South Park.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so what I started doing when I was trying to recruit office tenants and retailers and restaurants and bars and nightclubs and equity and debt, I would take them to the Rouse, and no matter, it's open from 5 a.m. till 2 a.m., 7 days a week, and just close 3 hours of restocking. And no matter what time of day I went into the store, it was absolutely busy.
Right.
Now, if you go into Northridge at 4 p.m, which is where I grew up, there's not that many people there.
Right.
If they come,
Those don't see the potential bar.
It didn't show potential. It was happening.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
was no potential. It was real.
Right, but it's showing the new potential landlords that there's potential to have business late at night. And that's where I started enjoying downtown.
Yeah.
Like I said, as a guy from Toronto, I like a big city. I like going out at night and being able to walk around and not drive. And downtown was that kind of place in 2010,
Yeah.
where you can go out to great bars, amazing restaurants. So that's that journey. It obviously had enough of a base of a tenant to withstand the downturn and the recession after the 08, 09, and things continued to improve.
Yeah, what we did with that time, because I told you about the way that the bids are funded are by property taxes, our income continued coming in even when the economy was crashing.
Wow.
So that gave us time actually to do some really critical and strategic planning without, freaking out that we were going to go out of business. Right. And so that was super helpful. Carol, I have mentioned, is visionary, and some people call her the queen of downtown. And she knew that downtown LA was redlined in the capital markets in New York City. People would not, and they didn't want to invest their money in downtown. They remembered the time that it wasn't any good. So I was talking to Eli Broad one day and said, "What can we do?" And they came up with this idea of doing a road show where we would take the downtown story to the Plaza Hotel and have a breakfast there. And we hired people to have a relationship with Lehman Brothers and all the big JP Morgan Chase and all the big bankers. And we had a panel of experts. So we had on that panel, I have to think back, we had John Cushman III, who talked about real estate of Cushman and Wakefield, right? We had Eli Broad, who talked about the importance.
What was his interest in it? Did he already have the museum plan?
Yeah, but he'd already opened the museum on Mocha. He had not yet had his plan for the Broad. Right. So there was Tim Lewicki, who had successfully built Staples Center and was in the process of building.
Okay, so they're pitching the Alliance, here's capital partners to come and maybe lift the sort of restrictions in the red line.
And guess what? It worked.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you say, of course. Oh, Ari, no, I know the history. you know, in the rearview mirror that it worked, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but we didn't know at the time whether it would work, and it worked so well. We did it in 2002. We did it in November of 2002, so just a little over a year after 9/11. Can you imagine? I mean, oh my gosh. We did it in 2002. It was effective. People started believing in us. We did it in 2004, and then we did it in 2006, and then we didn't have to do it anymore because people believed right on down.
Yeah.
And I was with at a meeting on a project that was being built, and the guy came up to me and said, "Hey, Hal, I met you at the Plaza Hotel at that breakfast for downtown." And I said, "Well, does that have anything to do with your $40 million equity investment in this project?" And he's like, "Yeah."
No.
I'm like,
Amazing.
where's my point?
Okay.
You know, right?
I mean, okay, yeah, huge. And okay, so I want to unpack some of this because it's a great overview of what exactly I wanted to know and what I set the intro up to. Is since '94, the resurgence of LA. And I think we can glean a lot from that in what needs to happen or what could happen in picking himself back up out of the current downturn. And, it's people like you, it's people like Carol, partnering with the people that have the vested interest, the investors to change people's, belief. I'd mentioned, or we had talked about the adaptive reuse. And I recently just heard an interview on Taylor's podcast, No Vacancy, with Jamie Lee of Jameson. And
This is a brilliant woman, by the way.
I haven't met her. Yeah, the whole.
Yeah, she turned 40 and she's going on 140.
It's incredible. Yeah. But she spoke about, her father's investment into K-Town and the struggles that they faced in real estate, during that period coming out of the 90s, like we'd said, the riots, the earthquakes. And so it takes these relationships with the key figures, the property owners, the tenants. It's a concerted, whole effort, and it's incredible. I love that story, starting with, Bunker Hill and taking us through, South Park and the Ralphs, which I never knew was so instrumental. And then when I started hanging out downtown and doing a little bit of business down there, it was all about the Whole Foods on Grand and, how bustling that is. So the question I want to, go to now is, what happened? How much is it chalked up to COVID? And how can we, take lessons from, what you guys did, in the 2000 period today to bring things back? Or what should we do different?
Well, that's a big question. I only took us up through to 2007. So I want to just fill in a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that promptly. So we can kind of get
to the meat of today.
Yeah.
In 1924, 100,000 people lived in downtown LA. Over 100 years ago, 100,000 people lived in downtown. When I got here in 1994, it was 18,000. Under Carol's leadership and mine and Tom Gilmore's and Jeff Palmer, for 25 years, we have 100,000 people again. So we're back at parity, and we have the units that have been built to house all those people. So in February of 2020, downtown LA was on rocketing to the moon. We were in international news, positive stories every day. People who prior to this all going on said downtown will never come back, which just wound me up, right? And then COVID hit. And COVID, I didn't have kids in this lifetime, but I had a city, right? COVID was like seeing your child struck by a car in the crosswalk in front of school and killed. That's what COVID was. It hurt us severely.
Right. No one's working in the office.
Yeah, nobody was working in the office, and it gets worse because people didn't come back. We have built the story as well. So just hang on though. We got to tell you about the painful part now so that we have something to look back on later.
Right.
We were right.
Right.
About 65% of the people that used to come downtown every day to come to work don't.
Mm-hmm.
So if 65%, and we used to say about 500,000 people came down every day to go to work.
Yeah.
So 65% of that 500,000 doesn't come downtown. It's not good.
Yeah.
It affects everything.
It makes sense.
Yeah. If you and I had walked into Bottega Louis, which was also one of the deals that I helped facilitate, I did about 300 deals. So any restaurant you like, you're welcome.
Yeah, we like your
You're welcome.
I always say that as my deal.
Yeah. So it was just, it was rocket and moon. But if we had gone in February 2020, if we had gone to Louis at noon, we would have waited a half an hour.
Right.
Okay. Now you can just walk in,
Sure.
at noon. So that's
So COVID really
it really hit us hard.
really hit us. Yeah. And then now, trying to pick up out of that, what do you think needs to happen? What are the changes, or how do you tempt a landlord? Like, I had lunch with a friend on Thursday this week downtown. We're walking in the financial district, and he's just pointing out to me all the places that he used to love going to eat that are now gone. We had up a Tender Greens. It was good. It seemed like the only option, though.
Right.
So what do you think the business owners need to hear in order to sign a 2-5 year lease on the retails?
Well, we have a lot of work to do. And it's no secret that downtown has had some challenging things happen to it from a public safety point of view. First of all, our city doesn't have enough police officers. We should be at about 12,500, and we're like 8,500. So you figure it out. But I want to go back to we had the pandemic, and then we had the George Floyd incident and riots. Right, the downtown was boarded up for a year and a half. It's totally boarded up.
Yeah.
Okay. Most recent,
It wasn't just a office. It was like a safety issue.
Well, it was a big safety issue. Right. And
The riots. Yeah.
Yeah.
The civil.
the people called civil unrest. It was riots and looting and all kinds of bad stuff. Well, that was happening in a broader area, but downtown got the coverage, right?
Right.
And we've had some bad incidents happen in downtown, and I don't want to minimize those incidents, but they are so rare.
Right.
Ari, I've been in downtown for 31 years. I walk the streets with impunity day and night.
Sure.
I don't feel any more safe or unsafe than
Right.
I've ever felt. But people that look in and see press reports,
Of course.
think, and then when we had the ICE protests and cars burning, they think all of downtown is that way.
Right.
And listen, when I was with Carol at the Business Improvement District, I developed a housing tour downtown that lasted for 4 hours. People would come to Louis about 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday.
Yeah, I was supposed to do one of those.
I thought, well, that time. Well, you waited, but I got to tell you something good. So I took 50 people twice a month for 12 years all over downtown to get them to drink the potion and move downtown.
Right.
And I was very, very successful.
Right.
And thousands of people. And by the way, I live downtown. I just celebrated 20 years at the Douglas Building at 3rd and Spring.
Wow,
It's
it's a long time.
It's a long time,
Yeah.
because I used to be like in the witness protection.
I think I lived in 20 different. Yeah, I was in that program. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
With that or not paying our rent or something. I don't know.
But these tours and this ambassadorship that you've done is not going to bring the people back.
No, I disagree with you totally. No, there needs to be leadership, and people are there. Listen, we got 100,000 people who believe in downtown that are living there.
Right.
The condo market has been badly affected in terms of price, which we'll talk about. But people love living downtown. They love the experience of it. They know it's not unsafe. But let me finish the story on the housing tours. So at the beginning of the housing tour, I would say, okay, the number one question is downtown safe? That's the number one question.
Right.
Going back to the early 2000s, 2002, and I would say no place is safe. Unfortunately, in our society, no place is safe. But I feel safer in downtown than anywhere else because we have business improvement districts. We've got 8 of them. So $50 million a year of private sector money doing private government work in downtown, including security. And but I said, listen, I want to tell you, when you're in downtown is not all peaches and cream. We have a lot of tragedy here too. And we have people that are homeless. We have people who are mentally ill. We have people pushing a shopping cart. And I said, you're going to see them on this today. Now, if that makes you scared, don't move downtown.
Right.
Don't. It's not for you. Stay in Hidden Hills or Rancho Palos Verdes, which are, lovely, lovely places.
Right.
I said, and I can tell you that these people have challenges, but they're not dangerous. And at least, never been to me or anybody, anybody that
I was going to have their impression of it. I often wonder if the crux is that LA has always been a single family, haven, since the post-war,
Mm-hmm.
people wanted to live in residential communities with sidewalks. And, the how you guys overcame that and brought people down, but like, is LA ever going to become a real urban core?
It was, and it still is. When somebody is as invested as I am, who's been around as long as I am,
Yeah.
I remember the tumbleweed, right?
Right.
Coming down the street when I started at Cushman and Wakefield. But I want to put a really personal part into the story. So, not everybody who is homeless is mentally ill or a drug addict or an alcoholic. But in downtown, I'd estimate it's about 95%.
Wow.
So just remember that. And when I was working for with Tom, I had a really I was an alcoholic and I was an IV drug user. I was a junkie in a Brooks Brothers suit, right? So I was pushing cocaine and everything else, and I hit my bottom when I was with Tom, and which is its own story. And Tom and Jerry helped save my life. And I called my buddy who worked at the Midnight Mission and told him, listen, drinking and using doesn't work. Not drinking and using is possible. I was a failure. I was trying to overdose to kill myself. I was so ashamed. And he said, well, we have a 12-step meeting coming, tomorrow, which was February 5th of '01. Why don't you come? And I had been around 12-step programs in the past, and I did. And that's my sobriety date is February 5th of '01. And the only difference between me being on your podcast and, being in a tent in downtown Los Angeles is if I ever pick up drinking and using again, which would be crazy, but it could happen. That's waiting for me, and I don't want that to happen. So what happened was way back on this housing tour, it was an early sobriety. I was less than a year, and I was talking about homelessness and shopping carts and encampments, and I said to the people just what I said to you here, which is, and I need to let you know that the only difference between me giving you this tour to try to recruit you downtown and being one of the people that are suffering is if I drink or use again, because I'm one of them. And you saw 50 people just drop their, their jaws because they couldn't believe. And don't ask me what possessed me to do that. I think it was divine. It was a divine inspiration. And also I wanted to own my sobriety and make a commitment at a public level. And I did. And that has happened. So they believed everything I said after that. Right. And I started just doing that on every tour.
It becomes relatable and you humanize, and that's so important in that struggle. And that's how you and I got connected, was through the Midnight Mission. I'm glad you brought that up. And they had you tell us about that a consultant type role. So
yeah, under my
to draw in support and in development funds.
Right. That's right. So I was, when Mike Arnold was the CEO, I think the Midnight Mission has only had like 5 CEOs in 111 years.
Yeah.
Clancy was at for 50 years or something like that. I was a friend of Mike, and Mike brought me on as a consultant because I'm a good fundraiser. And so I came on for a little over a year to be a professional fundraiser for the Midnight Mission, and I had a blast doing it. And then when Mike retired, they kind of reapproached how they were doing that. But I still, of course, support the Midnight Mission, and all it does. And for people that don't know, the Midnight Mission has been around since 1914. When I went there for my first 12-step meeting, it was at 4th and LA Street, and then it moved years later to 6th and San Pedro. It's a big facility that serves about 1 million meals a year to people who are suffering from homelessness and drug addiction, and it shelters hundreds of people a night. And it's a very, very important institution. So give to the Midnight Mission. We love that.
It's interesting geographically.
Yeah.
The mission is in Skid Row, which divides, and this is going to lead me to a question, if I could. The Arts District, what divides downtown Central Core is divided by, the Skid Row. And so you have this sort of annexed part of downtown, which seems to me not to be suffering the way the rest of downtown is. So what is the Arts District doing that maybe we can learn from?
Well, a few things. I mean, Skid Row itself was done by public policy. We decided 60 years ago to put services in that area, because primarily it's a commercial area that closes down, right? And there's not a lot of people.
It's like right on the shoulder of the fashion district.
Yeah, exactly. So it actually has a definition. It's 3rd Street on the Skid Row is defined in public policy. It's 3rd Street on the north, 7th Street on the south, Alameda on the east, and Spring Street on the west, which has actually now become really LA Street. It's gone over a couple streets because of our adaptive reuse. But we as a society, we're just like, you know what, we're just going to relax our enforcement of drug laws and things like that. And that will keep them there, drinking and using, and out of the central business district and out of Woodland Hills and Northridge and you name it. And that policy, was not a good policy, but it lasted for many decades and it worked. And
This is
then
like acceptance and tolerance for open drug use.
pathological acceptance.
Okay.
Yeah, and normalization, which we could do a whole nother show on this issue, because a group of us got together in 2019 and said, listen, our government is not doing its job. There have been a series of federal lawsuits that basically gave people who were experiencing homelessness, which is a long way of saying people who are homeless, but people think somehow when you say it longer, it lessens its, effect, which I think does a disservice to everybody. It's a euphemism, but what happened was there was a law called LA Municipal Code 41.18. And what 4118 said is you may not sit, lie, or sleep on a public sidewalk. And if you do, and you're told to move by a police officer and you don't, you can get thrown in jail. And guess what? It worked. We didn't have encampments, and people weren't on the sidewalk blocking it, so other people couldn't use it. And then the
Skid Row was
it was there. That way, it was tolerated there,
but not
but
outside.
not outside. And now it was starting to be everywhere.
Right, because that's what New York City has, that rule. You can't sleep in the street. You have to go into a shelter at nighttime.
Yeah. So there's a lot of differences on New York, but I think now we have 3 or 4 shows. So anyway, the ACLU came and say, hey, this is cruel and unusual punishment to throw somebody in jail for being homeless. The federal district judge agreed the city had the right to control the public realm. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned that district judge. And over a 15-year period, it became, the Supreme Court said for the 9 Western states that these laws that prevented you from being on public sidewalks and things were unenforceable. So we said, okay, but a bunch of us got together in 2019 and said, okay, people have the de facto civil right to be homeless anywhere they want, even though it hurts the entire community.
And the person actually
who's dying.
Right.
Yeah. And so we formed a consortium of people, and yours truly raised $1 million of cold hard cash from people who believe that people shouldn't be dying in the street and hurting the entire community. And we started a group called the LA Alliance for Human Rights. And we sued the city and the county on March 10th of 2020, 7 days before the lockdown. And we won a settlement with the city and the county, and that's another show. But we're starting to make things better for people. But in the meantime, a Supreme Court case came down on the same issue of laws that prevent people from being on the street. It's called Grants Pass. It came out of the circumstances in a case in Oregon, Grants Pass, Oregon. And what the Supreme Court has said is the cities can have laws that prevent this, and they're not unconstitutional.
Okay.
Yeah, there was an argument made by the ACLU that it was cruel and unusual punishment. The Supreme Court of the United States says no, it's not. The government has a right to control the public realm, but cities themselves can choose to use that tool or not. Right. The day that came down, Mayor Bass made an announcement of we're not going to criminalize homelessness, and she's continuing things. So all I want to do for today is to tell people it's the most important work I've ever done in my life, because it's saving lives.
Yeah,
Right.
It's clear that there is a back and forth on this debate.
Right.
But what maybe I've noticed in the arts district, or these bids, right, that were so instrumental,
right,
in the resurgence of downtown, is that if you could maintain with security personnel, or first responders, or keeping things clean, that the public and these organizations have an ability to keep things clean. Yeah, the graffiti taken off of a glass storefront, it's going to change the the desirability of someone to continue that sort of behavior. So it seems that maybe what I've noticed the arts district doing is they control the property owners have a really strong control over, the bids and the upkeep and the maintenance and the lighting and the
Yeah. In your original question, I should be a politician because I didn't answer your question, right? About why is it that the arts district doesn't and can't. That's your ultimate question. The answer is, and neither does the central business district for the most part,
Right.
Bunker Hill, because of the bids.
that's
Because the business improvement districts have outreach people. We contract with people assisting the homeless. It's called PATH, and we work with people and help them and cajole them to get help. So that's why much of downtown doesn't have
right. So leaning in these is one. Two, going back to how it all began in the resurgence in the late 90s is the adaptive reuse or reimagining how the real estate can draw in new investment and new occupants. So in San Francisco, we were talking before this morning how we're seeing maybe the tech companies, took flight, but now you're seeing them come back in a different way, where it's a lot of the AI companies and they're, we talked about the data storage, and this is now bringing, a tenant base to the city again. And this, I wonder what's your imagination if you could have a fantasy of where downtown LA might be, let's say the time the Olympics come in 2028, 2-3 years from now. How you imagine it, because it may not be the same, right?
Yeah.
It like San Francisco, it's a great city. It's always going to be where people want to leave their heart. It's always going to have a topography and a setting that is desirable. In LA, being a beautiful climate and, close to Silver Lake and, good accessibility to the West Side, it's always going to have the draw, but it might need to be reimagined. How do you see that maybe being in the next 3-4 years?
Well, I'm going to give you 3 and 10. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 years time, and what's going to happen in 10 years time when we're doing another podcast together. Hopefully,
3 and 10.
Yeah, 3 and 10. Things are getting better now. They are getting better in downtown, even though the public doesn't think so. The big problem is the public thinks downtown is unsafe. They think it's unsafe.
Right.
It's not unsafe. Come on down and experience it and support us because we're hurting because you're not coming to downtown. Let me tell you something, Ari. The mayor needs to get all of her employees back in the office, building and safety, fire, a bunch of people that work for us, for the people of the city of Los Angeles, are working from home.
Right.
What is that?
Yeah.
They need to, she needs to be a leader, get people back, and then other leaders can get people back in our office buildings in downtown.
Right.
So by
that's happening more since COVID. I know other people that work downtown, they're being called back. So that's going to help.
it's helping. So that's why I'm saying it's getting better. And I'm calling on the mayor to do that. Yeah. Right. And she should also be saying, listen, downtown has been hurting. We need you to come support downtown again.
Right.
We built a multi-billion-dollar subway system to downtown that we're really not utilizing.
Yeah, with a new connection.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said before, we've been around since September 4th of 1781, and we're going to get through this. All right. We're going to get through this hard time.
And there's signs that it's already happening.
It's happening, but it's not happening as fast as I would like.
Sure.
Now, adaptive reuse. In 10 years' time, when we're sitting here, much of the downtown skyline, which is historically big, modern office building for which there is much reduced demand, they'll probably still have office space within them on certain floors.
Okay.
But the balance will be residential.
So there's going to be an entire tower.
It doesn't need to be the entire town. They're just like 801 South Grand,
Yeah.
the upper elevator bank. And the issue is that in order to do adaptive reuse on these more modern office buildings, there is no clear path as to how much seismic work needs to be done to keep people from getting swashed in an earthquake. I can tell you right now, if we had a very big earthquake in downtown LA, the engineering in those buildings, including Aon Tower, First Interstate building at 707 Wilshire, they're not coming down. They are modern buildings. I know Kit Miyamoto is a world-renowned structural engineer who does nothing but earthquakes for a living and engineering, and his office is in 707. So he feels safe being a 1965 engineer builder.
Right. Okay.
We can do this, but right now there is no clear path. So would you as a developer want to come in and buy a building and not know what the city was going to require you to do?
Well,
Because right now, I'm hot on this one. Right now, there's no clear path, and there's people talking about like retrofitting the entire building, which is impossible. It would make it non-viewable.
residential.
That's right. And then there's also a narrative that floors are too big to turn into housing. They're right. It's too big to turn into, an apartment or things like that because the bay depth from the core is too big, too deep. But if the entire floor is open, you could create an urban village. Think of it like a dormitory in the sky. People will have little, I call it privacy palaces. They won't have plumbing or anything. The kitchen's on the core, the bathroom's on the core, the laundry's on the core, and
They'll share.
they'll share. We need we need community.
Yeah. That's happening all over, like South LA near
Yep.
USC.
Mm-hmm.
Trip Link. They build these housing, 3 bedrooms, and there's like, for every 5 bedrooms, there's 1 kitchen and 1 bathroom. So
Right. So by the time I die, good. I'm glad you like it. So there's a lot of people. Nella McCosker is a very important leader in the community, and Lou Warren at CBRE, and others. And but right now, everybody is just like scared to lead and make a decision. And that's the other thing that the mayor can do is to get ahead of this and tell her staff, look, find a way to Ari, we sent men to the moon, or at least a really good sound stage in July of 1969. We can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm really tired of this narrative that it's too expensive and we can't do it. It's malarkey. And by the way, this is really sad. Buildings, these we call them trophy buildings, the high rises in downtown, Brookfield and others, very big landlords, too big to fail, have failed. They're selling these buildings for 15 to 20 cents on the dollar over what they were selling 5 years ago. And we have unlimited need for housing in Southern California, and we got empty buildings. What do you think we should do, Ari?
what about Ocean Towers?
Oceanwide Plaza.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked about that. So for those that don't know, they're called the graffiti towers. The 3 towers that were built across from now what is Crypto.com Arena and LA Live. And Anschutz Entertainment Group, AEG, sold that land years ago to a company called Moynihan, and Moynihan sold it to a Chinese company and to build Oceanwide Plaza, which was going to be hotel and condos, etc. And one of the financing mechanisms for Oceanwide Plaza was called EB5. EB5 was a program of the United States whereby you, as a foreign national, if you invested $500,000 in the United States that helps create jobs, you got a green card. It was pay to play. Well, that was all being funded. That's how Oceanwide Plaza was being funded. And then when President Trump started getting in some fights with President Xi shut off the valve.
Okay.
So that money stopped coming and the project stopped. And then we saw what happened. It got graffiti laden. So
Here it hands once, now it's back on the market.
it's on the market. It's in a bankruptcy. This is what I want to happen. I want Philip Anschutz, who's a very rich man, a multi-billionaire. AEG.
Okay, right.
Yeah, they built Staples Center.
Yeah.
They still call it Staples Center. What I want Mr. Anschutz to do is I want him to buy out of bankruptcy those towers, and I want him to turn it into the biggest, wonderful residential community in America of various income levels. And that will be his legacy, and they'll be called Anschutz Towers.
Right.
Because Ari,
Well,
he can't take the billions to heaven. Why not do something?
Right.
One of the big arguments on Oceanwide Plaza is it's too expensive to finish. It doesn't pencil. Well, guess what? If you're a philanthropist, it doesn't need to pencil.
I love it.
Just do it.
I love
Because those buildings are going to, these buildings, do you know how long these buildings can last? They can last thousands of years in the sky as long as they don't rust, right?
Right, and as long as they're not exposed to the elements too long that they have been.
Yeah.
The other option is there is no other option.
Yeah.
I can't tear them down.
Well, they could, but that wouldn't be very greedy, would it? Hey, there have been different people, including Rick Russo, who said they need to be ripped down, and we'll see.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a big play in commercial real estate now
Right.
is the tax incentives to do medium and low income housing. So
Right.
it sounds like a great solution. You are more fired up than I would have imagined and so passionate about downtown and LA and our city, which I didn't know that you're from because you always go back to Michigan. every year. You always miss our overnight walk. We're in August.
Yeah.
And so I thought you might have been through there from there, but you go there, I imagine, every summer to kind of get some respite and get out of the city that you lived in
That's right.
for 20 years. And I'm passionate about it. I'm excited.
Well, not longer than 20. I've lived here 65, and I've been downtown for 31.
Okay, 30
And I've lived downtown
20
since '01. So
20 years in that
yeah,
in
that
that
unit is up
yeah.
down. Yeah.
But as I like to do with all the guests as we wind things down is ask the same series of questions. And one of them you sort of already answered, but on a more personal level, where do you want to be
Oh,
3 years from now?
oh my gosh. Well, my favorite thing to do in life is to stay sober and help other people get sober. So that's what I call my spiritual income. But I have to pay, the mortgage, and I have 3 dogs, and I gotta buy kibble and things like that. One thing that I want to say before we complete today is that the downtown condo market is 30 to 40% less expensive than it was 5 years ago. So it is the only value play in Southern California, and you should be moving downtown and buying a unit. I can help you buy it. And,
I've had that idea. My partner doesn't love it,
yeah,
but I love that idea. And so thanks for touching on that and sharing
yeah.
your personal goal. And what would you maybe have done different going back 10 years?
I left the business improvement district because I was making a good living for a nonprofit, but I was kind of living paycheck to paycheck. So I thought I'd go out and, make big commissions again and everything else. And then COVID happened. So that kind of threw that off. So if I had to go back, I'd just stay there if I'd be the CEO now. But you know what? That's not what happened. And guess what? If I stayed there, I couldn't have done this LA Alliance for human rights deal, which is very, very important. So we should not, regret the past. But in where I have to know I'm going to live. I turned 65. I'm living to 93. When I die, the population of downtown will be 500,000 people. That subway that we designed to bring everybody to downtown will be used by residents of downtown to go to Hollywood and to the beach and to everywhere else.
I love it.
All it takes is belief. Ari, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
So let's think we can instead of just.
It's very interesting real estate because there's all these other geopolitical, pandemics that, and then the science and the AI and the demand and how we're living that influence it. So 2 more as we wind things down. A very important question I love to ask people is their favorite book, movie, or song.
Oh my gosh. I have so many favorite books. If I test
One of them, when we had lunch,
Yeah.
you didn't let me leave until I ordered it on my phone.
Yeah.
And that was The Power of the Subconscious Mind.
Right. The power of this goes to whether you think you can or you can't. You're right, that Henry Ford said. And by the way, I need to pay you like $20 for touching the microphone every time I did. I don't know what. I did that nervous microphone. The Power of the Subconscious Mind was published in 1963 by Joseph Murphy. He was a PhD. Murphy moved to America in the early 1900s. He wasn't an educated man. He got himself educated. Then he became interested in theology and he became an ordained minister. He moved to Los Angeles. He had a huge following. They met at the Wilshire Ebell Theater for his congregation. And then he became so big, he had a radio show that broadcast it. And then he got interested in psychology and he went to USC and got a PhD.
Tell us about the message.
The message is our minds are like icebergs.
Okay.
10% of our mind we're using to carry on this dialogue, which has been fun. Thank you for inviting me. The other 90% is all down below the surface. And, insulin is, helping sugar get into the cells from the breakfast I ate earlier, all kinds of good stuff. But what Murphy says is whatever you can conceive of in your mind, you manifest it. It's as simple as that. It was published in 1963. It's still in print, and it was given to me when I was getting really, really down about the pandemic. And I'm a very Carol Schatz always calls me a Pollyanna, an unrealistically optimistic person. And I was getting down. So a friend of mine, Jeff Mallon, gave me this book, and it changed my life because it changed my framing and perspective, and et cetera. So when everybody else is doing doom and gloom about downtown, I'm like, stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're manifesting it to be worse, so let's turn it around. And by the way, Ari, we live in a region of 18 million people. I don't need that many people to, follow my baton, my pace of my my drum major shit to make this happen.
So I know you shared, some of the reasons, but any others that maybe be important to know why you're doing all this?
This is a commercial. People are like, what does the guy do now when he works for himself? I never gave away from the boss, but I do real estate. So in the last 4 years, I've done residential real estate because the commercial markets aren't great. So if you need to buy a condo downtown, call me. I do consulting. If you're trying to do anything, Ari, in downtown LA, you don't know where to begin, you call me and either I can do it for you. I know who can. I give tours of downtown Los Angeles, and
I still want to take me.
yeah. What I do is I take companies out because even before the pandemic, people would go to their office to go home. They knew nothing about the artist district. So I kidnapped from 4 hours from 10 in the morning till 2. And by the end of it, the company and the team members are experts on downtown from Chinatown to the 10, the river to the 110 freeway. So I do that. And then I produce videos about downtown. I've done over 50 videos. It's a show on YouTube. It's called What's Up Downtown with Hal Bastian.
Love it.
He's watching.
Yeah.
And I'm reprising that. It's great to get out good messages about downtown because I refuse to give up. Yeah. And, I think Winston Churchill just said, never, never, never give up. And when you, another saying is, when you get tired, rest, don't quit. Right.
Yeah.
Don't quit. Sorry.
Good. Well, it's Sunday. We got to go rest a little bit. Thanks for doing this.
I just open house. Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
I would say thank you so much.
Yeah, this is
All
so fun.
Thanks for all your time. Okay.